Really glad to be here, and I guess we could just save a little time because when you guys get back to your rooms later, you're probably going to be maybe tired or maybe you've had a drink or two. So how about you fill out your survey now, and you can write that I did a really good job, okay? It's responsive, it's mobile, and you can just go ahead and start right now. So you can do it while I'm talking, I don't mind. Just fill in that I've done a good job. Okay. Onward though. You've taken a little bit of my first part. Now my notes were here, so maybe you were reading them and you took an idea from me. But my question is a little bit different, so you didn't read it quite right. You know a little bit about me, but in speaking to you, I'd like to know a little bit about you. How many of you are aspiring innkeepers? Okay, welcome. How many of you have been innkeepers 1 to 3 years? Okay. 3 to 7 years? The 7 to 10 year range? And more than 10? Okay, so we've got a great group of knowledge here. And, you know, new innkeepers, you're going to be so excited to talk to everybody. And even those that have been innkeepers more than 10 years, I think you'll be excited to talk to new innkeepers because they have an enthusiasm that might be really good sometimes to bring back into your daily life. So I'm really thrilled, as I said, to be here because I know many of you personally. I'm fortunate enough to know a lot of you virtually, and I'm looking forward to meeting the rest of you. When I was asked to come, I thought, okay, my goal, especially when you do an opening session, is to motivate, to entertain, and to inspire. Frankly, I think I'd rather be standing here waiting to do the ice bucket challenge. Because motivating, entertaining, and inspiring a group that does that for me on a daily basis is really a big hat to wear. But I'm going to try. Here I go. To motivate, entertain, and to inspire you. But saying to a group of innkeepers, I'd rather be doing something, or I'd like to be doing something, is a very dangerous thing. Because you people are people that make it happen. So I don't want to be worried over the next 2 days that somebody's going to come up behind me with a cold bucket of ice water. So I brought proof that I've taken the ice bucket challenge. Is there anyone here, and don't be embarrassed if you're not, that is not familiar with the ice bucket challenge? Isn't that amazing? It's amazing the viral aspect that this has taken. In the old days, it was chain letters, and we were afraid to break the chain. Now, the Ice Bucket Challenge has gotten the word out across the internet about a cause, and it's also raised some money. How many of you have taken the Ice Bucket Challenge? Okay. Anybody want to admit they were challenged and didn't do it? Okay, did you donate? You don't have to say. All right. But the Ice Bucket Challenge is so viral that when I did the video, I asked my mother, and she's in her age, she's 80, and you know, 80 is not so old, but I mean, I spent a long time helping her use her iPad. And I said, Mom, do you know what the Ice Bucket Challenge is? And she said, of course, Mary. It's the biggest fundraiser in history, and it's all over the internet. Well, she's right. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about, and you guys are going to be talking about, is all over the internet. Maybe not to this level, but just how much people, every person in this room is touched by the internet, because, and all ages are, because they, you know, you admitted it, you know the Ice Bucket Challenge. So back to the task at hand, which is welcoming you to the Arts and Science of Innkeeping. However, I didn't tell anybody this in the many emails arranging this before I came. I've decided to change the topic. And the topic is the arts and science of everything. Because as innkeepers, you really do everything. And I understand that it's an innkeeping session, however, it's really more on topic if we talk about the art and science of everything. And when we talk about everything that you do, it is a little bit art, and it is a little bit science. Sometimes it's more of the other, one or the other. So in thinking about how to do the first thing that I said, which was to motivate you, I was looking at different material for this, and I came across a phrase that I think if you carry this phrase with you throughout the conference, in every session that you go to, and in every time you look at things that you're in, I think you'll really get something more out of it. And that is, the guest sees more in an hour than the host sees in a year. The guest probably sees more in a minute than you see in a year. But I think it's really something to carry with you as you get motivated to look at everything that's going on and look at it just a little bit deeper in terms of how does this look to the guest. Even record keeping, how you keep your records and how you present yourself when you speak to the guest, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, is what the guest sees immediately when they come or make contact to your end. In fact, in thinking about arts and sciences, because I have an arts and sciences degree, it made me think about college. And actually, your agenda looks a lot to me like a syllabus. So here's another thing that you stole from my notes. How many of you have looked at the syllabus? Okay. How many of you looked at the fact that there are cocktails later? How many that there's breakfast, that there's prizes, that there's lunch, there's another happy hour tomorrow? Well, I want to underscore or underline exactly what you said, and that is one of the most important things that will happen here, and that is the networking that goes on. But in addition to that, you are going to have so many sessions, and I have the mic, so I can put in a shameless plug for a session tomorrow on PR, which I will be doing. However, you will have many tough choices when you go to the sessions, because at the same time as my session, there's also going to be a session on overcoming marketing challenges, which is very important, as well as one by a fantastic speaker, I don't know who knows Twyla, Toodles, on housekeeping. So every time you have to choose, you're going to have to be making tough choices on which ones to go to. And your organizers have done, from what I've seen from many other conferences, an excellent job of putting the material online. And I hope that you take advantage of that to look at the outlines for the classes that you didn't go to. And while you're at those networking sessions, you know, the cocktails and the breakfast and the lunch and the dinner and the giveaways and all of those things, you also talk to each other about what other sessions they went to and what you can get from them, because there's so much here to be offered. Each of the sessions, though, is going to mean something different to each one of you, because none of you run your inns the same. So the people in my office, when we were talking about how different innkeepers are, pulled up some clips for me that they thought were funny, because they thought it represented some different innkeepers. So let's just take a moment and laugh at maybe ourselves a little bit. It's funny, but there's a little element of it that everybody can see, and it's a little bit laid back, all right? Here's a different one. Here's a little more type A. So that one's a little bit strict and stingy and whatever. And hopefully, all right, I don't want to make a value judgment. No one's like that. But the point is, there's so many different ways to run a property, and there's so many different ways to be an innkeeper. So I kept coming back to thinking about, what am I going to talk about? It's like an itch you want to scratch. What is the art and the science of innkeeping? I know what it is we're trying to get at, but how am I going to present it? So finally, one of the guys in the office, and I have a terrific team, and if you have a team back at the end, or if you're doing it with your partner, I hope you can rely on them as much as I rely on my team. And he did the most logical thing, and that is he Googled it. So he Googled the art and science of innkeeping. Now, it did come up with, did you mean my book, Running a Bed and Breakfast for Dummies? However, there was one copy available on Amazon of the art and science of innkeeping. So I got the book. I couldn't wait for it to come, because now I could stop agonizing over what I was going to talk about. And even at the last minute, which is how I often do things, I was going to have a complete outline, as to how to do a session on the arts and science of innkeeping, because I had a book now. And I'll let you borrow it later if you want to, after you hear what I say, because I did buy the only copy that was available. So there's a table of contents, and there's things that you would recognize: accounting and record keeping, marketing. I vaguely remember a little bit of what they're talking about, but I'm not too sure. There's a chapter on management. The subchapter is management of men. Don't get me started. So I decided, you know, maybe Google, or well, actually, to put this book into perspective, when the book came out, Holiday Inn had 700 inns. Today, they have nearly 3,500 inns. So I was comfortable with the fact that things have changed since this book came out, and decided to go with what Google suggested, which was my book, Running a Bed and Breakfast for Dummies. Now, running a bed and breakfast is certainly not for dummies. In fact, when Wiley Publishing came to me and asked me if I would write the book for dummies, my first thought was, because I'm very protective of this industry, I don't want the bed and breakfast industry associated with For Dummies. I don't want B&B Finder associated with For Dummies. I don't want Mary White associated with For Dummies. And I thought, I don't know what I'm going to tell this guy, but I'm not going to do this. And that afternoon, by chance, my daughter wanted something at Barnes & Noble because, of course, she needed something last minute for a school project. So it wasn't possible to get overnight shipping from Amazon. So we were in Barnes & Noble, and I always go up to the small business section or to the marketing section whenever I'm in a store like that. And for the first time, it really occurred to me as I looked down the aisles how many yellow and black books there were. There is a For Dummies book on just about everything. And it's not saying For Dummies. Dummies is just a brand. It's actually legitimizing an industry that now we have a For Dummies designation. So in looking at my table of contents, and thinking of it as a syllabus, I pulled out a couple of chapters that I wanted to talk to you about how I see innkeeping today. And the first one is marketing. Marketing maybe because it's my passion, or just because I really strongly believe that without marketing, there's no point. If you don't have guests at your inn, it doesn't matter how you're doing anything else. So I thought it was a logical place to start. And in thinking about the original book of Arts and Sciences of Innkeeping and the new book, it's kind of like a then and a now. So I started looking at some of the then and the now of different types of marketing and branding things. I found this one interesting. Does anybody remember the old Microsoft logo? I mean, I don't, but what's interesting is they almost knew, or maybe they were part of inventing the cloud, because this looks so much more modern and up to date. The Apple one in particular, I think, could say something to some of us, or some innkeepers. I say us when I talk about innkeepers because I feel like I represent so many of you guys. I'm not suggesting that you run out and change your logos, but there are many innkeepers that have old Victorian type logos and things. But that's no longer what they're in and the way they're furnished their inn, or what they're trying to represent. Well, if we look at Apple's original logo, which I don't remember, but does anybody know, can anybody make out, or does anybody remember what was on Apple's original logo?
The apple logo.
Exactly. So, and now Apple has done such a great job at how they place their logo. Every time you use an Apple product, you're actually advertising for them. For instance, I brought mine. I finally came to this day and age and decided to get the MacBook Air. So the way I want to open it is, you take the Apple, right? It looks right to me, and I want to open it this way. But instead, I have to have it upside down for just me in order to advertise to all of you at everything I do. In fact, oftentimes when I'm in a presentation, this is what I'm staring at, is people advertising Apple to me. So sometimes it's also just the presentation, or the placement of where you do something. When you're talking on the iPhone, there's the Apple is there constantly. So they've got an up-to-date brand, an up-to-date logo, and the placement is just so key. And that kind of goes along with the thought that a guest sees more, and I'm changing the proverb, in a minute than you see in an hour or a year. Sometimes it's just the little things that you can be doing. The other thing that you need to be thinking about is, and I'm not trying to, with this next little video, trying to suggest that everybody should be catering to children, let alone babies, that babies are your client. But I just want you to watch this and I'll talk through it as to what the point of it is. Steve Jobs has coded some of her operating system as well as your guests. And that's a really important thing to be thinking about when you're doing marketing. Because just because you're not doing something doesn't mean that your guest isn't doing it. I would venture a guess that there are a lot of inns in here that don't have a mobile website. But a lot of your guests are looking for things on their mobile website. And here's a case where even if you are doing it, even if you are using your iPhone constantly, I think there's still a lot of inns that don't have a mobile website. And it just kind of, it's pause for you to think that they see more in a second, which is they're trying to find out information about you, and when they get to your full website on their mobile phone, it's either they're clicking off, it's frustrating, or they're making a decision. So in looking at innkeeping today, it's important to be looking at these things. And I don't sell mobile websites, I just provide observations. The thing that I learned, though, is in putting together for this presentation, when they came up and told me about this clip they found of Bob Newhart, they heard of Bob Newhart. They knew he was a comedian, some old guy or something, but they never knew that he'd had an inn. And then I said, did you ever know he was a shrink? And they're like, nope, we didn't know that either. But the point of that is not that they didn't know that, it's just the point and the aha, huge, and I thank you guys for having me do this presentation because of what I learned. I do hundreds of interviews, mostly trying to dispel the myths about B&Bs being like Bob Newhart, you know, with his other brother Daryl and his other brother Daryl and all that other stuff. And I'm trying to convey to the audience in the interview, especially on radio interviews, that B&Bs aren't like Bob Newhart's B&B, that they're a special place to stay, wake up something place special, that they're an experience. Well, the people in my office are into their, they're in their 20s and into their mid to late 30s. If they don't know, if they're listening to my interview, they have no idea what I'm talking about. So it's really important, too, to be thinking about what the message is that you're trying to give so that you can see if it's something that pertains to your guests and if your guests are hearing the message that you want. Goes along with the marketing of then and now. You've probably had the discussion on the association level, on the inn level, and the local level as to whether you should still be having rack cards, and there's big disagreements about that. There's merits, and there's certainly a place for them at tourist stops and the Chamber of Commerce and things. Some people still put, branding on napkins because it's good. Other people are using something a little bit different. Matchbook covers. I don't remember the last time I picked one up. Although I do remember recently trying to find some matches and I couldn't find any. So I don't know if that's as dead as you would think, but the point is you need to be really thinking about the then and the now. And I don't have to say too much about it because we know that the now is technology. And because it's technology, and if you've ever heard me speak or read any of the things that I write, you'll know that something that I say over and over and over again is you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And that's why technology has to come into this conversation, even though you know you need to be looking at it, especially the example with the mobile phone. And then soon, I think you also need to be thinking about social media. Now, some people, when they're presenting, don't like what people are writing, or other people think, oh great, they're interested, they're writing something down. But I don't really care what you do, except for I do want everybody to pick up their pen right now, and I want you to write something down. I want you to stop, and I want you to write down, because except if you're an aspiring innkeeper, you're off the hook, because you probably don't have a website. I want you to write down that when you get back, because you will have already filled out my evaluation, so tonight you can spend the time trying to book a room on your own website. And several of you are going to say, oh Mary, I don't need to do that. I do it all the time, because sometimes when guests call, rather than even going to your reservation system, you just pull up your website and you book a room. It works just fine. Well, it works just fine for you because you know where to push the buttons and you know what to do. Our job at B&B Finder is to send guests to your website so that they can make a reservation. They don't book through us. We do put a link to your reservation system on your listing because, again, they're not booking with us. But guess what? We've got to find it in order to put it on your listing. And we're professionals. We do this all the time. I cannot tell you how many expensive people who have spent good money on websites because their web designer probably even told them differently, but they thought it was cutesy or something like that as to the way that they wanted to have the book button. Or if it's reservations, people know the word book. They're looking to book. And you want to make sure that it's clear. So try and go through the process of making a reservation and make sure that people can find it, or have somebody who's never done it on your website do it. The other thing is, when you go through the process of making a reservation, read everything the guest is reading. By this I mean that a lot of people don't realize, because they just click, click, click. A lot of innkeepers don't realize they just click, click, click through the reservation process, that they have their reviews on their reservation page. Now, some people might want it there. That's terrific, because I think reviews are very, very, very important, and I think they're a big part of the selling process, having someone else sell for you. However, once they're on your reservation page, you're done selling. They're buying. So having your reviews on your reservation page can do several things. One, it can distract them, and then they get caught up reading those reviews, and then they get busy and they never get around to making the reservation. Two, they could say, oh, why does this one only have 4.5 or 4 stars or balls or, whatever it is, checks. And they go and they click, and now they go to another website that has lots of other B&Bs. Maybe there's only one other B&B in your town, or maybe there's no other ones, but there's nearby B&Bs, or maybe there's lots of B&Bs in your town for them to choose from. I don't know why you would send somebody who's in the process of buying something to somebody else. The other thing is you might be sending them to a site where you have an arrangement where you now pay a commission, but they were on your website. Why are you paying a commission to somebody because of the reviews when the guest was already buying? Finally, a lot of innkeepers, when you're reading go through everything and read everything. Some of the reservation sites have a service where they will email your guest after their stay to write a review. Some people like this feature because then you don't have to do it. But if you didn't realize it was there, or you forgot that it was there, you might also be sending the guest the email to write a review. And the guest doesn't know that you forgot and the other one's automatic. They think you've emailed them twice, okay? So you want to be sure that you see. And also, we were very careful as to what happens with our email addresses. I don't know if you want to think, do you want another company emailing your client, which is your guest? So what I see a lot is that I see that innkeepers are not aware that this is on there, or they've forgotten it's there. Also, just read. It's a good time to read to see if your policies are up to date. These are things that, because you get into autopilot, and this is not necessarily about doing the newest and latest, greatest technology. This is just making sure what you have is up to date. And that's a big part of the innkeeping now, is what you already have being up to date, as well as the new things. You also probably get more phone calls than you would like from guests. And they usually come at a time when you're busy or whatever. But it's probably safe to say it would be easier if you didn't get as many phone calls from guests with questions. Any question that you get from a guest, whether it's a phone call or an email, is a question that is not answered on your website. So if you're getting the same question over and over again, do you have availability on a certain date? Then it's probably a good chance that they're having a hard time finding your availability. I do know some guests think that if they call, something's going to change and what's booked is not booked. However, if they're calling to ask about activities, or if you take children, or how many people, what size beds in the room, you know what the questions are that you get. Those are the things that are not on your website and that should be there, A, so that the guests can keep going through the buying process, which is what they're doing when they're reserving with you, but also so that you're not stopping to have to be answering these questions. So use it almost as a focus group. Whatever the questions they're asking, that's something that's not answered on your website. You also have a great chance to make a first impression with the record keeping that's available now for you. You don't have to pull out that ledger and wonder what your prices are. And if you are using still a ledger, then make sure you're organized in using a ledger. But you have some great opportunities. You're an individual inn, and these are in no particular order or don't mean anything, except for the fact that it's confusing as to which is the best one. Now, there's several that are here, so you could take advantage of not just networking with each other, but you have experts that are in the exhibit hall, the vendors, and you can talk to them and ask them good and hard questions, as well as asking each other what software system they're using and which ones seem to work the best. Your guests also see so much about you, and you don't have a second chance to make a first impression. And I would venture to say that when you're furnishing the inn, it's a good time after you come back to the inn, after it's already furnished, or it will be furnished, it's a good time when you come back from a conference to just walk around and look at it the way a guest would. I would venture to say that in some inns that I've been at, some of the amenities that they still have, it would be better to actually take them out because they are so outdated. An example would be TVs. Now, I've been to beautiful, lovely inns that have the highest ratings on TripAdvisor and in the various, select registry and things like that. And then they got these teeny little TVs, they're real fat ones on the back or whatever, stuffed onto the dresser. Now, I can't presume to say that the inn should take it down because I'm not the innkeeper and I'm not there. I don't know whether many guests are watching them, but some of them only just play a DVD or whatever is that what you used to call them? Right?
VCR.
Yeah. VCR. So looking at furnishing the inn, because not everybody can put all flat screen TVs in. Not everybody wants to have TVs. But looking at the amenities with a fresh eye, because you're going to learn so much at this conference, you're going to be inundated and overwhelmed with trying to figure out analytics and what to do about reviews and things like that. But these are the things that you're probably not going to take a session on that I think are really a part of the art and the science of innkeeping, which is just looking at things with a finer eye, because the guest does see more in an hour than you see in a year. There's new amenities too that you could think about adding. Here's some that I've seen. This is an outlet which also has the USB to put in too. Just the simple thing, so many hotels as well, but definitely B&Bs where you guys have the decision to make. That's what's so great about you. You have the decision that you could go on your way back to the inn and buy power strips, but yet so many inns don't have them. And just putting them in a tasteful place would be really, really, really appreciated by guests. The other thing is that you maybe have had a guest ask if you happen to have an extra charger for an iPhone 5 or something like that. there's not that many of the really popular phones out there, but if you are getting that question, having just a couple of extra chargers, if you're one of each type, one of the 3 or 4 types, would be really nice. And it would also help to quell one of the newest diseases that's out there. Does anybody know what it is? Nobody? Nomophobia. Fear of being without your cell phone. Okay? In the old days, you didn't leave the house without checking for your keys. Well, now, your keys are probably in your bag or in the car half the time, and you start it with a button. However, people don't want to be without their cell phone. And I have been at an inn, I've been at a restaurant, at my golf course where I didn't have my charger, and I have been so thankful when they've had it. So, just a little something to think about if you've been asked for it. It's a nice little, not too expensive, and some of them are universal even that you can get. So on the lines of amenities, I'm going to go out a little bit on a limb here, because I know I'm in Texas, and I know this is oil and gas country, and I know that we do not mess with Texas. However, one of the girls in the office did show me an inn that has installed an electric car charging station as an amenity at her inn at the inn. So, I mean, and I do have to say, the friends of mine that have electric cars, they're like almost as in love with these Tesla things as their dog. But anyway, for what it's worth. So moving along, because I don't want to mess with Texas, but just want to talk about the importance of looking at amenities, is something that's probably near and dear to your heart, which is getting extra help when you need it. Have any of you ever hired an in-sitter? Okay, just one. Now, if you're not aware of it, in-sitting, and I think from my perspective, the reason that in-sitting is more popular and more valuable is because so many people inns are selling nowadays. The consultants that are selling inns are selling lots of inns, and there's people out there that have good B&B experience who don't really want to leave the industry yet. There's also an innkeeping network that trains in-sitters. They come with insurance and things like that. Now again, I'm not here to sell in-sitters. However, I talk to a lot of innkeepers that automatically say no. And no might be the answer, and that's a perfectly good answer. Because an in-sitter does, they are the one that makes the first impression oftentimes for a guest, so they have to be vetted very carefully. However, when you think about an in-sitter, you need to not only think about the fact that your inn will be open during the period that you are away, but you will also have somebody who's able to take reservations for you for future stays. So you need to get out a piece of paper and pencil and do the math. And I think it's something that's worth considering for some inns, not for everybody, but I think it's worth it to bring up, because in-sitting many years ago was just very haphazard. But there's a lot more organization to it, and especially now that you have access to better record keeping, you can start to put a value on what it would be if you were to have an in-sitter. Now, along the same lines, but not exactly in terms of taking a break, which is keeping the most important asset you fine-tuned, and in fact you have a session on that, which I think is very important, and I highly recommend that you look at that when you're looking at your syllabus. But keeping your most important asset you fine-tuned is a couple of things. It's taking advantage of the technology and the tools that you have out there to try, and I run my own business. It's a small business. I mean, I don't have guests there all the time, but I answer emails at night. I mean, there's no boundary, okay, in terms of it. So it's very, very difficult, but it's a goal that we should all have, is to run our businesses and not have our businesses run us. And that's something that is even harder for innkeepers to do, but you need to salute yourselves, because you guys are the ultimate entrepreneur. I mean, this is true small business in America or anywhere, but it's a profession. And by coming and having professional development like you are doing, that's a big part also of keeping the most important asset, which is you fine-tuned. Because in any industry, you need to have that in order to just get the invigoration and that to keep going. But you've come here today to talk a lot about, I'm sure, to figure out how to make more money. And so that's assessing your success and building upon it. And you're going to have a lot of classes that are going to show you how to do that. And I also want to give you a couple of ideas as to what to do, because I was looking at things that weren't really covered. And that is looking at a niche market, or niche, or however you want to say it. Now that can be almost anything, or it could be just expanding on what you're already doing. For some people, catering to pets. Maybe you've been thinking about it. Maybe you've decided absolutely not, or maybe you already do welcome pets. Well, you can add a little bit of fun to it, and people with pets will spend almost anything. Did you know there are certified canine massage therapists? Yes? Okay. So partnering with a package like this, the media will love it. The guests will love it, but it's an idea of just being a little bit more creative in terms of what you're doing, how to take it to the next level, which is what building on your success is. It will be the science of poring over your analytics as well and seeing what's working and what's not, but it can also be a little more of an art, and you can have a little bit of fun with it. Recently, a friend of mine wanted to do a bridal shower and a girls' getaway for her niece who's getting married this October in the Finger Lakes. So she stayed in a few B&Bs, and she's like, oh, Mary, you're always talking about how great these B&Bs are. Maybe we should do something at a B&B. There's a B&B in Skinny Atlas, Hobbit Hollow. It's on your site. What do you think? Well, we talked to the inn, and they really had never done a girls' getaway. And they really, at first, they weren't too interested in doing it. And in fact, if you are interested in doing group events, there is a session on your syllabus for that. Because it could be, depending on your bandwidth for it, because groups can be wonderful. They can fill it in, or they can fill you full of nightmare of horrible guests who are, very demanding. So you want to go to that session because you want to hear the pros and the cons of it. It's not automatically a good idea. It's also not something that maybe your zoning or your neighbors are going to like either. But in speaking with the inn at Hobbit Hollow, we did end up having our girlfriends get away there because we spoke, the innkeeper managed expectations. We knew what we were expecting. Okay, are you trying to look to see if I'm in there? That's not me, that's Annie. She's 11. But I was there, and I had a good time. And I think the innkeeper had a good time. But it's something else to be considering. So in looking at your future, I did mention earlier in the talk that we do have to talk a little bit about social media because it's here to stay. And people are using it, guests are using it. It's hard to track, but people also just make an impression on whether you have social media. So I just want to kind of get an idea as to what everybody's level of social media knowledge is. So I'm going to put up some icons, and you call out. Do you know what that is?
Twitter.
Who tweets? Who hates tweeting?
I've never even looked at a tweet.
Very good. Okay. What's this one?
Google Plus.
Who has a Google Plus business page? Right. Who gets why we have a Google Plus business page? You understand why? You can come up here. I think the reason to have a Google Plus business page is just because of the first name, Google.
Google.
Okay? So that's probably what you were going to say.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's the reason to have a Google Plus business page.
Facebook.
Very good. Okay.
Pinterest.
Does anyone do Pinterest? More and more people are doing Pinterest. Pinterest it's basically pictures for those that don't know it, and you pin them. More women do it than men, and a lot of women make the reservation, so if there's a correlation, I don't know. But a nice way to use Pinterest is, for instance, at the end of a blog post, sometimes we'll create a Pinterest board. So if we were doing something on Galveston, we might put together a Pinterest board on everything Galveston or something like that. And it would include our inns, and it would include some of the breakfasts, and it might include some of the events and sightseeing things that you could do. We also use it when we're pitching to the media. Because if we're pitching an event, it's a way to show them some pictures and things. It's also just something that people troll around on the internet, and we do get traffic to our site from things that have gotten pinned and repinned. How about this one? LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that LinkedIn is going to bring you any reservations. However, everybody gets Googled. And if you get Googled, you want something to come up. I mean, nothing comes up about me when they Google me. The great thing about LinkedIn is that LinkedIn usually does come up, and you control what goes on it. So you brag about yourself, and that comes up high in Google. Not so bad.
Instagram.
Okay, so one person has Instagram. A couple people using Instagram. Instagram's interesting because I have friends, because of their corporate jobs and things like that, they feel they can't be on Facebook or on Twitter and things for privacy reasons, but they do have Instagram accounts as just a way of sharing pictures of things with other people. Now, Instagram also has some interesting marketing opportunities that I have seen some hotels use. But at this point, you're probably feeling a little bit like this. So don't fill out my evaluation right now, okay? Scrap that idea. You could be checking your reservation. No. What I want to do is just share with you one last video, and this is one that I've used before. But before I do it, I don't want you to think that I think you should be short order cooks and put together an Instagram menu. It's because so many people don't understand what Instagram is that I'm going to share it, and also I want you to just watch how much fun these people are having. So what's incredible about that is A, how much fun people have, and the people can't wait to share their pictures as soon as they take them. And that goes with everything, with Facebook and everything like that. I mean, a couple of months ago I stayed at an inn just because they made it really easy. It was in Napa Valley, and they had a hot air balloon package because I wanted a picture of me sailing over the Napa Valley in a hot air balloon on my Facebook page. And it just came down to it because how do I pick between which of all you guys I stay at? But, you know, guests are kind of doing the same thing too. They want to have the experience because everybody's having fun on Facebook, right? Of course. So, ways I've seen Instagram used in marketing, there's actually, it's a hotel, but they call it the first Instagram hotel. And they've created a spot that's a special spot at the inn, or at the property. I think it has a little bit of historic value, but they make it the selfie spot. And, you know, you could do something like that. They have then the pictures scrolling. They have people tag the property so that then all of their friends see what's going on. And they do have a little monitor, and this is if you're more tech savvy, where you can be doing it where people even see what other people have posted and the other fun that guests are having. Rather than just telling people where to go, you know, when guests ask you for an itinerary of what to do, you could tell them the best spots to take pictures for Facebook or for Instagram, and just adding that into your conversation with them. That some people have had contests if somebody has more than X followers, stays with them, you know, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 followers, then they get a free night or they get something or other. I've even seen packages put together which are the picture perfect package, appealing to the fact that everybody wants to be having fun on Instagram or on Facebook. So it sounds a little bit out there, but if you watch, I mean, it used to seem that when guests came to breakfast, and you might still feel this way, that it was rude that they had their cell phones. But sometimes they're probably even marketing for you. They're taking the pictures and they're posting. I see people's heads nodding. So make sure they're tagging you. And, you know, if you don't know how to do that, I'll help you or find out how, so that people know. When you see that they're doing it, don't be embarrassed about, you know, saying that. Before this session, anybody that was here early, I grabbed a few people and said, will you please take a picture of me because I have to post this on my Facebook page, and you get it. So it's okay to say, oh, do you want to know how to tag us in that? Because people, they don't think anything of it. They do want to know how to tag you, but they want to get the picture out there. So I hope you've enjoyed what I've talked about in terms of the arts and science of innkeeping, but I can't let you go without a challenge. So not many people have taken the ice bucket challenge. It could be that, or it could be to go and to get the most out of this conference that you can, which I know you will. So I could do both, but I think I'll stick with the second. And I really want to thank you for having me. Thank you.